Fellow Ghanaians, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. It's a Thursday evening, the 6th day of July, 2023. It's a day where the minority in Parliament carried out their threat of not participating in parliamentary proceedings on days that they have to go to court. When I say they have to go to court, I'm talking about days that they are members of Parliament, i.e. James Jachikwe minority leaders, that's Keze Latofo, have to be present in court. Now, during the swearing in of James Jachikwe on Tuesday, the minority leader, Dr. Keze Latofo, made the point that they were not going to take part in parliamentary proceedings on days that James Kwesing was going to court. Today, the minority chief whip, Kwame Agboja, who is also the member of parliament for Adakulu constituency in the Volta region, indicated that they were not going to be part of the parliamentary proceedings. Let's first of all listen to what he said when he addressed the media, and then we'll come back and tell you what the focus of tonight's discussion is all about.
Be participating in business on the floor because we are accompanying our two colleagues, Honorable Kwesing and Honorable Latofo, who are due to be in court this morning. Based on that, we are unable to attend to any government business. We'll be in court to support them. I think the minority leader gave this hint when he was making comments after the swearing in of our colleague, Honorable Kwesing, on Tuesday. We are in court in solidarity of our colleagues who are being persecuted as far as we are concerned.
So that's Minority Chief Whip Governs Kwame Agboja there. And so today in Parliament, well, once he was done with that statement, they went to the courts to actually show solidarity, as he would tell you, with their colleagues who are facing what he terms as persecution and not prosecution. Well, today in Parliament had to adjourn because of the unavailability of the minority. A Deputy Majority Whip, Habib Idrisu, who is Member of Parliament for Tolon, describes their conduct as irresponsible.
Where they were elected to come and sit in Parliament. They were not elected to be accompanying people to court. Their constituents should take note that today they ask a lot of questions about their educational infrastructure, about their health infrastructure, and about tourism in their various constituencies. But they were not in Parliament to even ask those questions. The ministers were there, the answers were provided, but yet none of them were not in the chamber, in the excuse that they have accompanied somebody to court. I don't know what kind of democracy or parliamentary procedure is this, but we are watching them keenly, and the business of the day is done for now. So if we as legislators are making laws and we expect the judiciary to implement it, now we are now telling them that so now Kwesing is above every other Ghanaian. So they should actually call that all cases in court should be dropped, but not of a particular person.
So that's Member of Parliament for Tolong and Deputy Majority Whip Habib Idrisu there. Talking about how there were ministers in the House waiting to answer questions. Unfortunately, the MPs who had asked these questions, some of whom were on the minority side, were not available. Now let's get into the conversation and ask very simple questions. First of all, is this a good strategy? Bearing in mind that we have a hung parliament, one that is expected to deliver for the good people of Ghana, is the minority strategy of boycotting parliament every time that their colleagues go to court the best strategy? What if the majority is able to marshal 138 members of parliament? Wouldn't that be an easy way for them to pass all the controversial bills which maybe the minority could have prevented them from passing? Now, shouldn't the law be allowed to work? Why would the minority have concerns with the application of law? After all, we're talked about being a country of the rule of law. This evening, These are focused here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. My name is Winston Amoah, and we're joined via Zoom by Dr. Rashid Draman, who is Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. And we also joined on the phone by Habib Idrisu, Member of Parliament for Tono. You'll also be hearing from Roxanne Nelson Dapiamekpo, who is Member of Parliament for South Dai. Roxanne is NDC Member of Parliament for South Dai. And then Habib Idrisu is NPP Member of Parliament for Toulon and the Deputy Majority Whip. But let me start off with you, Dr. Rashid Draman. So the minority in Parliament today boycotted Parliament. Now, they had indicated they were going to do so on Tuesday when James Jachikwe was sworn in as Member of Parliament. First of all, what do you make of that decision? Would you say that's a good strategy?
Winston, thank you very much for having me. I think, the strategy of solidarizing with their colleagues who are in court is one that, we have seen before in our country. What we haven't seen is the entire caucus of a party moving from parliament and going to the court. That we haven't seen before. And in my personal view, I think that is a strategy that might not be sustainable, particularly given the nature of the cases that are before them. Because we are not talking about only the Honorable Quayson. We are also talking about the leader of the minority caucus, and we are talking about the what do you call him, the Honorable Collins Dowda, and perhaps there might be others that are coming. We don't know. So, what is the caucus going to be telling the people that elected them to represent them in Parliament? I think that that should be a question that should be on the minds of the minority caucus as they embark on this strategy. At the end of the day, I think we ought to separate what is the personal legal challenges that individual MPs are facing and the representational role that's expected of them by Ghanaians. And again, I must add, Winston, in parliamentary language, there's what we call a responsible and irresponsible opposition. In some countries where we have an opposition that is described as irresponsible, that is where, for instance, you have a party that does not have any chance of forming a government any time in the history of a country. That kind of opposition can decide to be irresponsible and block government business at all times. But the NDC, as we know, is a responsible opposition party and one that is likely to form the next government. Whether in the 2024 elections or any time thereafter, that we know for sure. And because of that, I think they have a duty to make sure that they show up at work and provide the alternatives that Ghanaians are yearning for. Because if they are not in the house, as we know, Winston, oversight and accountability usually is supposed to be the business of an entire house.
Sure.
But in most cases, in our country and in other places, it has been the business of the opposition. We don't want a house that where there is no opposition that is holding the government to account. And if this strategy continues, that's what we are going to see. And I think that that's not good for our democracy.
Okay. So are you suggesting that this is not a good strategy?
Winston, I'm suggesting that perhaps at this moment, the leadership of Parliament would have to step in. The Right Honorable Speaker, the leaders from both sides, they've risen up to challenges like this in the past. And this is one time where that leadership is needed so that some cool heads will prevail. And whatever the matters are, I don't think, and maybe the NDC MPs who are joining us might be able to answer the question. I don't think they are against their members answering any legal questions and challenges that they have before the court. If I hear them very well, I think they have problems with the approach, particularly the daily kind of showing up in court and so on for the honorable member for Asin North. And if that is the matter that is in contention, I believe that the leadership of Parliament, together with the Attorney General, is able to deal with this, because at the end of the day, I think we have to remember the business of government is usually one that requires a lot of compromise, a lot of give and take. The minority is needed in the House in order for this to happen. So whatever their concerns are, I believe maybe the leadership can come together and deal with it so that the legal processes can continue. Because the last thing that a parliament or a group in parliament wants to send as a message to Ghanaians is that they don't want to answer, to the laws that they themselves have been a part of creating.
Okay. Now, I'll come back to you, but let me, bring in the minority and majority in at this point, and we'll start off with the NDC Member of Parliament for South Dai, Roxanne Nelson Dapiamepo. So, Honorable Dapiamepo, let me start off with you. And you heard Rashid Rahman make the point. He's asked that simple question. First, are you against the prosecution of James Gyakye Quayson? Honorable Dapiamepo, if you can hear me. Okay, I think you cannot hear me. So let me get to the Member of Parliament for Tolong, Habib Idrisu, who's been unhappy with the minority's position. Now, Honorable Habib Idrisu, this is Parliament and this is a democracy. Walking out or boycotting Parliament in protest of decisions is not a bad thing, is it?
Yes, good evening, Dr. Rashid. In fact, it's not about boycotting Parliament. Sometimes it has to do with the question of why. And if you look at the reasons that behind this particular boycott is to either show solidarity to their colleagues, minority leader, Atuforsin, and then the Member of Parliament for Asin North. But we have business that we're supposed to do today, and they are well aware. You don't need all 137 members of Parliament not to turn up to Parliament and to go to court to show that you solidarize with your colleagues. If you actually mean that the caucus there is there, those people are members of the caucus, and actually they could be able to appoint some members who accompany them to court to show their solidarity. And in this case, we members of Parliament, we are showing a very bad precedent. Bad precedent in the sense that this is not a precedent of such charges, either to Atuforsin or that of Quayson. It has also been the case that we don't in the majority at the moment. There have been cases like that. We all remember the case of Adamu Sakande facing the same charges with Quayson. You didn't see the then MPP members of Parliament boycotting Parliament with all of them going to the court. That was never the case. And if we do that, we are sending a very bad message to Ghanaians that we members of Parliament are now above the law, or there is no equality before the law. When you go to court, sometimes you ask yourself, if 138 members of Parliament are all going to the court, what are they going to do? Sit down? Or the members of Parliament don't have...
They say they're showing solidarity.
But that's what I'm saying, that it becomes impossible.
No, Honorable Habib.
You don't need all 137 to show solidarity. That's never the case. And mind you, this is just also to tell us that It is they are trying to frustrate government business. They are trying to actually bring a different dimension to our parliamentary process, because these are not fresh cases. Mind you, Acquah had been going to court even before he was made minority leader. Questions have been going to court even before the by-election ended. Why this sudden change? This is not the first time that these people have been going to court. So what we are saying is that today, in fact, we were not aware that they were not coming, including the Speaker of Parliament was not aware. Even if you follow the procedures very well, when we went into leadership meeting, then Speaker came, started proceedings after prayer. Then he had to suspend sitting because he wanted to understand why. So he called leadership to the conclave. That was when we were told that in the morning they contacted their leadership. They said they were going to have a caucus meeting, and at the end of the day, they said they are not coming. And not all the 137 of them were in court. Some of them deliberately, they just said they should not just turn up, and we were not aware. But we had business to do, of which questions were programmed, and ministers were written to, they had brought their answers, and the ministers were in Parliament to respond to those questions. The Minister for Education was in Parliament, the Minister for Tourism was in Parliament, the Minister of Health was in Parliament to respond. And majority of the questions that they were asked, were from the minority. Now you come to ask yourself this question, either to go and solidarize with your colleagues in Parliament, and then to also stay in Parliament and do your legislative job. That is what your constituents have actually elected you to do. And then, so I feel a bit disappointed today that our colleagues have to actually boycott Parliament in the name of these criminal cases that have been going on, which is not fresh. And you are saying that it is fresh, and we are registering your displeasure about it.
Okay, now quick questions. Honorable Habib Idrisu. First of all, you say you did not know that this was going to happen. On Tuesday, during the swearing in of James Quayson, the minority leader was very clear that any time he was supposed to go to court, they would not be in Parliament. So how come you did not know? Because at least you would have known that today, James Quayson was going to court.
But what I'm trying to say is that the Speaker of Parliament, who is the head of that institution, was not in the know.
But were you personally aware? Were you personally aware?
I know that, and even the time, when you look at the cases, the time of the cases, my understanding was that I think Acquah was supposed to come earlier around 10 o'clock or 11, and then Quayson one will also come around 10 or 11, one of it. But we started proceedings today after 12 o'clock. And when I came earlier on in this morning, I was around the cafeteria. I saw Honorable Adongo coming out from the distance, and he was going. So I even greeted him. So I thought it was normal. They will come. And when I asked from the class what is going on the minority side, whether they were coming for us to have leadership meeting before we go into the chamber, my understanding was that they were having caucus meeting. And then all of a sudden, then it has to be the fact that they are not coming in, or they are. That's why I'm saying that it is not a good precedent we are setting as members of Parliament. It is not good for our democracy. And if we set this tone, it is going to affect a lot of things moving forward. When Dr. Rashid Rahman was saying that a responsible minority, which might form the next government, I find it very difficult based on this behavior to fit myself in it. Because if you actually have the mindset that you might form the next government after 2024 election, you wouldn't behave this way. Because if that is done, the cooperation, dialogue, and then parliamentary business will suffer. So if you have this kind of thinking, you will not be able to do that. So this is clear that they are not ready to form any next government. And I think that from tomorrow going, we'll be able to dialogue and be able to see what can be done. Because this parliament is one of the most difficult parliaments that we have ever had in the history of this country. Looking at the numbers, 137 on each side with an independent candidate. So we have actually been successful based on the cooperation we have with other concessions that we have been able to build over the years. But this thing, to go this tangent, it's just a bit of.
Now, before I get to Roxanne Dapiamekpo, you talked about, this decision being, not being the best of decisions. Your colleagues on the majority side, when Vice President Bawumia was going to submit his form, you went there. In the chamber that day, hold on. In the chamber that day, you were not there. I mean, we counted only 2 or 3 of your members there. Hold on a minute. Then, in Asin North, both of you, majority and minority, deserted your functions and went to campaign in Asin North. Was that also not good parliamentary practice and not good practice for our democracy?
Yeah, but if you look at the case of the Asin North, it was something we leadership, including we of both sides, we agreed that okay, today let's do light business or lighter business of the house so that we can be able to adjourn and then we can go to Asin North to help our various political parties execute this to see who can be able to win the seat. In the case of the day that the Vice President was filing his nomination, it was not the case that all members of Parliament from the majority side went to the party headquarters to accompany the Vice President, like what we have seen today. You have actually said that you have seen 2 or 3 people who were there. But today we didn't even see one, not even one. So in that scenario, you cannot compare. And we didn't say that we are not coming to Parliament because Vice President this and that. That day, immediately after
you were not going to be in Parliament.
I said that day, immediately the filing of the nomination. Majority of us were back to Parliament. In fact, majority of us were in Parliament even we went. I remember I went there with His Excellency the Vice President to file his nomination. But I was in Parliament before. I even signed even before I left for the place. So I was totally not absent on that day. I'm just waiting to see tomorrow vote and proceedings to see whether all 137 members of Parliament will be marked absent or they will be marked present. So I think Joint Firm should take interest of that. Tomorrow vote and proceedings, we should be able to see whether they were both all absent. But you will be surprised to see that majority of them will be marked present yesterday, like for today. Because, like I told you, when I was coming into the chamber, I met 2, 3, 4 of them, of the minority side, who were around, and all of a sudden they disappeared.
Okay. Now, before I go to Roxanne, you said you're going to dialogue. So, do I get the impression that leadership of the House, of which you are part, is in discussions on going forward, how to deal with this?
Yes, moving forward, we have to deal with it. We have been able to deal with a lot of issues because it cannot be the case that anytime there is this issue or there's a court case, you are not going to come. We are setting a very bad precedent for our democracy. What about other people who are also facing other criminal charges? My good friend Robson is a lawyer. He knows very well. After proven guilty, they are still innocent. But for you to say that we are boycotting this, we will not come when they are going to court, what message are you sending across? That members of Parliament, we are not above the law, we shouldn't be tried. When there are criminal cases against us, we should, say that it should be dropped or else we will come to Parliament. No, this is not healthy for our democracy.
And so that discussion that you talk about, when is it likely to be held? Has it been held already?
No. Today, like I told you, we did lighter business. Their leadership were not in the House. It was just the speakership, the 3 speakers, the speaker, first deputy speaker, second deputy speaker, and the leadership on the majority side. So tomorrow, definitely, we will be able to see what we can do. That's why we registered that Hansard is captured, that the ministers were in the chamber to answer the questions, and the answers were provided, but those members of Parliament were not there. We finished business committee today, and we have already programmed whatever we're supposed to do for next week. Tomorrow they are presenting the business statement. And I wonder when those questions that were unable to ask today, when they will be able to find their way back to the order paper. It means that their constituencies are suffering. Their constituencies will not get the answers that they need because their members were unable to ask such questions.
Let me bring in Roxanne Nelson Dapiamekbo at this point. He's Member of Parliament for the people of South Dayi in the Volta region. He represents, he went to Parliament on the ticket of the NDC. Now, Honorable Dapiamekbo, your colleague, Habib has made the point that, you people are shirking your responsibility. You should be in Parliament doing parliamentary business. Some of your members had asked questions. And all of a sudden you went to court, all of you going to court. He says, why would all of you want to go to court? If you want to go and show solidarity with a colleague, some of you can go to court and the others stay in the House because that's your core responsibility as members of Parliament. So why did you choose to do that and not be in the House to carry out your responsibility?
Thank you very much, Winston, and good evening to your viewers. One of our core responsibilities as members of Parliament is to fight against injustice and to resist oppression. And so our walking out today of boycotting Parliament, which we put them on notice, it was not as if they were surprised. We put them on notice and we told them that anytime there was a court hearing for 2 of our members or 3 of our members, we will go and solidarize with them. And that's exactly what we've done. And let me say, this is not the first time questions will be advertised for ministers to come answer. And a member may not be at the chamber to ask the question, or the minister will fail to appear. So questions by our convention standards and practices, questions advertised are always re-advertised and rescheduled. The finance minister on many occasions was scheduled to answer questions. They will come give excuses. They are always scheduled for him to come back and answer them. So Habib shouldn't belabor this point. The next point I want to make in respect of our right to boycott Parliament because of what we believe in is that if you read Article 97 of the Constitution, one of the grounds upon which you can be removed from Parliament is to leave your caucus and join another caucus. So belonging to a caucus in Parliament, which in this case is the NDC caucus, is actually the creator of the Constitution. That is why membership of the House is arranged on caucus basis. So the caucus has the right to use every tool available or every tool legitimate at its disposal to prosecute its case in Parliament.
Yes, but he's also made the point that you have a responsibility to represent your people. And so, yes, your caucus can do this, but your main responsibility is your people, isn't it?
That is correct.
So,
and Winston, you can conduct a brief survey in Southend and determine whether my decision to boycott Parliament today to give solidarity to my colleagues in court is not in consonance with the aspirations of the people of Southend. So the people of Southend elected me to be able to fight injustice and oppression. And we believe sincerely that given the evidence available, the Honorable Jatikwesi, for instance, is being persecuted. We believe that given the nature of the evidence available, the Honorable Atufosin is being persecuted.
But Honorable Dapiamepo, you are a lawyer. They've been taken to court. That they are in court doesn't mean they are guilty. I mean, exactly. if they are innocent, the court will exonerate them, wouldn't it?
Our presence in court is not to intimidate the court. We have used the word solidarity. We are not saying that they shouldn't be prosecuted. We are saying that, well, if you decide to persecute them, we'll go and solidarize them.
Yeah, but when you say they are being persecuted instead of prosecuted, and in that case you're solidarizing with them. So first you've made the point that you think that this is a government that is witch hunting your colleagues.
That is so.
Okay. Now, if it is witch hunting your colleagues, don't you trust the judiciary to be fair in its judgment? And so if your colleagues are innocent, the judiciary will acquit and discharge them, as in the courts. You don't trust the courts to do that?
I can neither deny or affirm what you have said.
So at least there's some belief in the courts.
We have just received judgment from the court in respect of one of our members. The member was injuncted from performing the functions of the office, something that is alien to our students. Because the Constitution is very clear that where a person is elected and validly declared by the Electoral Commission, and another is aggrieved and decides to challenge the election that brought this person to office, he is deemed to have been validly elected and perform the functions of his office until the court of law says otherwise. But in the case of Judge Kwesi, the court found it prudent to injunct him. So he was not permitted to perform the functions of his office until the final determination of the case. That is a border for the NDC. So we have reservations.
So, based on that, I can reasonably infer that you have some concerns with the justice delivery system.
Indeed so. Indeed so.
But how long are you going to continue with this? So every time the case is called, you will not be in Parliament?
We have issued a statement to that effect, with the statement under the signature of the Chief Whip, the Honorable Kwame Agoja, the member for Adapulu. We have made it clear if persecution persists, cooperation will suffer.
Yeah, but if you do that also, the government can bring in business to the House when you are away, and you would not have a chance to perform your function. And Dr. Rashid Draman makes the point that even though we expect Parliament to be the check on the executive, the reality is that most of the time it's the minority that exercises the oversight responsibility. So if you are not going to be in Parliament, wouldn't you be letting the people down when they need you the most, when they voted for 137 of you in a hung Parliament to check the executive?
Winston,
Roxanne.
checking the executive of the executive does not only happen on the floor of Parliament. It happens also outside of the premises of Parliament. So our activities outside of the floor of Parliament is an aspect of checking the executive of this government.
But of course, we've seen it with the e-levy. You pushed and pushed and pushed. Even just last year, your side pushed that, the 100 Ghana cedis, which attracts no charges, be maintained, and the Minister of Finance accepted it. If you were not in the House, that amendment would not have been made, and that would not have happened, and the minister would have just gone ahead with his way. So you would definitely agree with me, Honorable Dapiam Ekpo, that being in the chamber is very important.
Winston, I agree that being in the chamber is very important. We also have a duty under law to challenge any infringement of the Constitution in terms of the procedure adopted in Parliament. If you recall, after the passage of the e-levy, we challenged the procedure on grounds of quorum. We have sued. The matter has been in abeyance before the Supreme Court ever since. It's part of the concerns we have.
Okay.
Part of the concerns we have.
All right. Please hold on. I'll get back to you shortly. This evening on our front on the Journal News Channel, we're asking the simple question: the minorities' boycott of Parliament, is it a good strategy? We're joined by Dr. Rashid Draman, who's Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We also have Habib Idrisu, who is Member of Parliament for Tolong and the Deputy Majority Whip, and Roxanne Nelson Dapiam Ekpo is NDC Member of Parliament for the people of South Dai in the Volta region. When we return after these messages, I'll get back. I'll start off with Dr. Rashid Draman on what he makes and whether he thinks there should be some dialogue and the reaching of a consensus in this case. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. You're on Upfront on the Joy News Channel. My name is Winston Amoah, and tonight our focus is on the minorities' boycott of Parliament today. You saw it, forcing Parliament to adjourn, and we're asking that question, whether it's a good strategy. We're joined via Zoom by Dr. Rashid Draman, who's Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and Roxanne Nelson Dapiam Ekpo, who is Member of Parliament for South Dai. So let me get back to you, Dr. Rashid Draman. You've heard, Roxanne, you've heard from, Habib Idrisu. What should be the way forward? But before I even get there, you've talked about this not being sustainable. Why do you say this action of the minority may not be sustainable?
Yes, I say so, Winston, keeping in mind that at the end of the day, whilst the minority is appealing to its base, I think there is the middle in our country that is also watching very carefully. They would always have their base, the NDC, the MPP will always have their base. I think the small percentage that is in the middle is one that I believe both parties have to endear themselves to if any party wants to form the next government. And because of that, if this continues and the NDC is seen to be running away from its responsibility in the House, I understand, as the Honorable Member said, they can perform oversight roles outside the House, but primarily, I think we voted for them to show up in that House that can only take 275 members and do the work that they are supposed to do on a daily basis for which they are paid. So that's their primary function. And because of that, I don't think that, assuming these proceedings run for an entire year, I don't think that the NDC can absent itself from the House for an entire year. So that is, the reason for which I'm saying this might not be a strategy that can be sustained in the long run.
Okay. But talking also about the middle, those in the middle, do you get the impression, is it your belief that if the NDC continues this way, they may have those in the middle punishing them during election 2024?
Yes, indeed. I mean, Winston, I think those in the middle are very discerning. They make decisions on the basis of how they judge a party. And in the case of the NDC, I think its performance as an opposition party is judged more by what happens in the House, not what happens outside of the House. I mean, like you cited the example of the e-levy and other things that they've been able to do. In fact, I've been working with and observing our parliament for more than 20 years.
Okay.
And until this 8th parliament, I didn't know that our parliament has really budgetary powers because for the first time, we have seen the budget process really challenged. And we have seen changes that have been brought to bear thanks to the kind of oversight and accountability role played by the NDC. So I think it's important that we keep this in mind. That at the end of the day, the discerning voter is watching this very carefully. I mean, they are going to have their base. I mean, 45%, 40%, whatever percentage, that's always going to be there. But I think the middle, those who decide on the basis of performance, on the basis of how they judge political party, I think we'll be watching this very keenly. I mean, you talk about, going forward. Certainly, I think in all democracies, we have seen even in the US and other places, I mean, things come to a head and, almost breaking points. But at the end of the day, dialogue is what has prevailed and what has, brought countries back from the brink. So I think we don't have any other alternative apart from ensuring dialogue. And like I said earlier, we've seen many instances when we thought that things were coming to a breaking point in our parliament, but the leadership of parliament has risen to those challenges, and the two sides have been brought together, and some cool heads have prevailed. And I think on this occasion, that is also possible, because at the end of the day, what we want is a functioning democracy. We don't want a one-sided house. That is not good for us. I mean, it is the citizenry that is going to be shortchanged. But Winston, since I'm on it, let me say this. When I hear the honorable member for South Dai, I think I am left with the impression that there are some concerns about the justice delivery system in our country, and if that is the case, I think that there should be some conversation in Parliament about this, because Parliament is a forum best placed to address any matter of concern, any matter of public interest in our republic. If parliamentarians are complaining about justice delivery, there might be millions of our compatriots who are also suffering. And so if this is a matter of concern, I think members of parliament should be bold enough and call it as it is. And let's have some national conversation. Because at the end of the day, countries that have gone down, in terms of following the path of destruction and the path of maybe anarchy, are places where people don't have trust in getting justice delivered to them. Then people begin to take the law into their own hands.
Okay.
We don't want our country to go that path. So if these are concerns, I think members of parliament should be bold enough, to call it as it is, and let them have some kind of dispassionate, conversation about this, because this is also in the interest of the other side, the majority side.
Okay.
Because minorities would change someday. It's going to be the NDC on the other side, and we want to make sure that we have a country that is a respecter of the rule of law. And not one in which everybody can just take the law into their own hands.
Okay, let me just bring Roxanne here to get his views on these points that you've raised. So, Roxanne, first of all, Dr. Rashid Rahman is making the point that if you have concerns about the judiciary, maybe it's about time you brought those concerns up openly and have a conversation about it. Something you're willing to consider?
Yes, why not? Speaker being the arrowhead of Parliament does that at his level. But you see, you must understand the ethos and spirit and letter of our Constitution. We cannot practically interfere with the judiciary in the performance of their functions. We interact at many other levels, including presentation of budget and its approval. So we do that. The Chief Justice, the Chief Justice, the outgone Chief Justice, when he had time, he appeared before committee, he's appeared before my committee on several occasions for us to discuss matters. But the concerns of Parliament is in respect of where the Constitution says in the performance of their functions they are independent. We cannot direct. So we are very careful in speaking on those things. What exactly is the matter? For some time now, for instance, I have discovered that there is a judicial onslaught, assault, in respect of the work of Parliament. It began with the quorum decision delivered by Justice Yoni Kulenji. There are standing orders and practices. A presiding member ought not to have a captive or a vote on any matter. Because when you sit in the speaker's chair, you are the speaker. And per the spirit and letter of our Constitution, we have a non-partisan, apolitical speaker. But the Supreme Court says no. When the deputy speakers preside, they came to Parliament on the ticket of a certain political party and represent some constituency. So when they sit in that black chair, they can cast votes. That's the first aspect. The second one is in respect of the Narcotics Control Commission Act. You cannot say that Parliament did not deliberate on a certain provision sufficiently. and therefore it didn't follow the constitutional procedure as laid down for enacting a law. So you strike down a law based on that supposition. Because that law, that's section 43 of Act 1019 constitutes part of the entire law. How do you say that all the entire sections or provisions as contained in the bill as brought to Parliament were debated except section 43? It doesn't make sense. So what about section 44 or section 45? So I know that in interpreting legislation enactment by Parliament, there's a doctrine interpretation before the Massa report to travel to Brassois. That is the things that went into making the law. Pursuant to the decision in the House of Lords case called Pepper and Hart. So we want to work. You see, we are equal arms of state. We want to help the judiciary to be efficient, so we give them sufficient money. In the consideration of, for instance, the 2023 budget, the judiciary came to Parliament to say that they need more money because they want to create more court of appeals in, say, Tamale, Kumasi, Takrady, Ho, so that they can hear more cases that come on the street.
Okay.
Then we granted the budget. As soon as we granted the budget, in January this year, the Chief Justice collapsed the Court of Appeals in Ho, in Cape Coast, in Tamale, and I think it's Nani, and said that all appeals pending before those courts should now come before the Court of Appeal in Kumasi and Accra. As a judiciary, when you do that, you put Parliament, you make us look not effective because you came to us that you needed more money because you want to do more work. So we also allow you to appoint more judges because you got a budget that you want to appoint 15 Court of Appeal judges, which you did in December 2022, and ask for money to be able to maintain them. Then the cost that they will serve in, you go and collapse the cost. Do you think we'll be happy with you?
Okay.
So we're not.
So
as a people, we are to ensure that justice delivery is made cheaper and goes closer to the people. How do you expect somebody who is bringing an appeal from Wa or Boga to travel all the way to Kumasi? When you are come to Parliament to say that, give me more money so that I can maintain the Court of Appeal in Tamale. We give you the money, then now you collapse the Court of Appeal city in Tamale.
Roxanne, let me just get your thoughts on another point because we need to be wrapping up shortly. Now, Dr. Rashid Dawan has also made the point that the floating voter, if I could put it that way, or the middle, those within the neutrals in Ghana are watching, and you could be disappointing them, which could affect your chances in election 2024. Are you minded by this? And is your party or your caucus prepared to change your position?
Winston.
Roxanne.
We are a political party that is very sensitive to the sentiment of the generality of the people. Believe you, the position of the minority, which by Mutakis understanding the position of the NDC in boycotting Parliament today and any other sitting day that our members will go to court, resonates with the generality of the people. This is the time that we must call and check the excessive use of executive power by His Excellency the President in this country. There are other more serious criminal cases that are sitting on the back burner. They are not receiving attention. People are asking. Our own colleague David Ankwa was killed, murdered in his bed. Nothing has happened.
The case is in court.
The case is in court, but it's not making progress. That is what people are saying. The case of Nakuan, too many persons, commercial ventures and investments have gone down the drain. People are asking, why are you adjourning Nakuan cases for 35 times in a matter of 2 years? It is not receiving attention. So, what we are doing as a minority, Winston, I bet you, it resonates with the people. The people rather see the rejuvenated minority as their only hope. That is why when they meet you in traffic, they tell you, Honorable Roxy, Honorable Diploma, for you people are our last hope. If you fail us, then all of us will go down.
So, Honorable Habib says they're going to have a conversation. They're looking forward to a dialogue with you. Is it something that the minority would consider, that after a dialogue with leadership, you probably may want to, vary your position?
Let me respond to this by quoting the opening phrase by my chief whip, Honorable Kwame in Abuja today. He says that if persecution persists, cooperation will suffer. We are willing to engage the government via the majority caucus or leadership in parliament. They know that we've been accused by our own party people for over-cooperating with them. People lost primaries in parliament on our side because we were perceived to have voted for ministers that we ought not to have. We suffered the consequences. We will no longer suffer for those. So, if the majority is not willing, if the government is not willing to build consensus in parliament, so be it.
Well, thank you very much, Roxanne Nelson Dapiam. Unfortunately, that is all time would allow us. Dr. Rashid Draman, thank you so much for making time to join us this evening via Zoom. Dr. Rashid Draman is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We're also grateful to you, Habib Idris, who is Member of Parliament for Tolong and Deputy Majority Whip. My name is Winston Amoah. On behalf of the team, thank you very much for watching. Up next is Joy News Prime. Catch you tomorrow on the Super Morning Show. Have a lovely evening.